Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. I'm going to tell you that whatever you expect of yourself, that's exactly what you become. Yes, you become your expectations. Then we're going to discuss your listener question. Should you put 15% or 20% down on an income property? What's the exact number of rental doors that you need for financial freedom? And should you hire a property manager or not? Today on Get Rich Education. MC Laubscher is the host of the Cash Flow Ninja podcast and president of Producers Wealth. He is on a mission to help you achieve financial independence and freedom as soon as possible. He achieves this by integrating the infinite banking concept with real estate investments to increase your returns and recapture cash flow that you are not even aware of that you're losing. MC shares the number one strategy of investors in his holistic wealth creation course at yourownbanking.com. Finally, Total Control Financial gives you checkbook control of your 401k and IRA money to invest in real estate. It's time to get your retirement money into your own checking account, but you've got to avoid the little-known tax that you'll pay with any self-directed IRA. Instead, it's time for the QRP. Learn more and get your free copy of the QRP book by text messaging QRP in all capital letters to 72,000. Get Rich Education is brought to you by Ridge Lending Group, Producers Wealth, Norada Real Estate, and Total Control Financial.
You're listening to the show that has created more passive income for people than nearly any show in the world. This is the powerful Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Lancaster, Pennsylvania to Lancaster, Texas, and across 188 nations worldwide. I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education, and you are back in that abundant place where financially free beats debt-free. And I am back home in the United States today. We're going to discuss some of your real estate investing listener questions here shortly. I'm going to ask you to bear with me as I was at the dentist earlier, and I think I'm still pronouncing my S's and TH's with a bit of a slur, and I should be sounding more normal next week. I swear to God that I have not been drinking here before taking the microphone, so a little tolerance today. I'm a real person just like you, and the show must go on. Oh, you knew I was a slackjaw anyway. Your listener questions soon. But first, you need to be aware that whatever you make of yourself in this one life that you've been given, I've got 4 important words for you. You become your expectations. You genuinely get to live life one time. Now, even if you believe in God or some other divine being, you will probably agree that at least here on this earth, you've got one life to live. Well, then you have got to do what you love. If you spend 30%, 40%, 50%, or 60% of your time doing something that's so undesirable that you will actually celebrate each week when that thing is over with, then you desperately need to change something, because you can change that. Are you just begging for Friday to get here? Well, then you've given into a losing mentality. If realizing that you've got just one life to live, if that doesn't motivate you, then realize that one day you will die. You're going to die. My own mortality is a great motivator to do what I love. You're going to die. It breaks my heart. It just totally breaks my heart to see people spending 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or even 50 years of their life doing something that they don't even like doing. And then if that's not bad enough, at the same time, they're investing money that they traded that miserably spent time for. They're investing that money into something like a mutual fund where they're just hoping that it goes up in value over time, further hoping that they can get their money back in 10, to 50 years. And even if you succeed in doing that and you get more out of your retirement fund than what you put into it, even after accounting for inflation and emotion and taxes and fees and volatility, even if you get more real dollars back out later, now you've got to try to convert your dollars into a lifestyle and into enjoyment at age 68 rather than age 38, back when you were trading in your time. Well, how do you even know that you're going to make it until age 68? You probably will, but you'll almost surely be less healthy and vibrant than you are at age 38. And that's the scenario right there if things go right. That's if they go well. I mean, what are those people thinking? You've spent most of your working life then settling for less, basically just as practice so that you can settle some more in retirement. So settling now, so then what you've set aside will set yourself up for a life of scarcity later as well. Well, there you go. You become your expectations. Look, if you don't love what you do for a living, if you don't have enough passive income from real estate and you don't think that you're going to soon, then consider working for less money than what you work for now. What if you worked at doing something that you actually like and you made 30% less money doing that than what you do now? Do you think that's unpractical? Maybe you're thinking that you just can't stand doing that, and you're going to justify that by saying, well, I'm unselfish and I'm going to stick it out at a job that I'm not passionate about because I've got kids to feed. Well, look, if you work for, say, 30% less money, but you're happier, now you're demonstrating to your child what's important. Instead, if you stay at the same job for more money, you're showing that child of yours that it's okay to be unhappy as long as you're paid more money. But look, here's some good news. Passive income from real estate helps you build that bridge to the happier job that pays you 30% less, because if you want to keep working and do something that's more fulfilling, well, if you build your real estate income up to 30% of your current unsatisfactory day job's income, now you can leave. Now you can leave and go do something fulfilling. Do something where you're not thinking about Wednesday as hump day. Do something you love. Do something where you're not just working for the weekend and you're going to be a great role model to your kids at the same time. You can keep the same income level you had at the unhappy job. It's just that 70% comes from your new happier job and 30% comes from real estate cash flow. Same income level, more happiness. See, in this one life you've been given, it's about having options. Options trump obligations. I don't recommend everyone just quit working and stay home and play video games all day. Instead, when you have options and do something that you actually want to do, society will benefit more from your work when you're doing what you want, because you're going to do it well when it's what you love. At the job you have, if you don't like it, you're probably not even being yourself. You're showing up when you don't feel like showing up. You're toting company lines for better job security or to get a promotion. You wouldn't naturally do that. That's why you're not being yourself. In this one life of yours, you can't even be yourself. I mean, that is just awful. And it's really an awful example to your peers and to your children. Most people live kind of afraid. Well, that's scarce. When you stop having to worry about money so much, now you can be yourself. I mean, do you want a better quality of life or a worse one? I think really that's the key question, more so than do you want more income or less? A lot of people are not living their dreams because they're living their fears. Fear and doubt destroy more dreams than failure ever does. It's kind of like how T. Harv Eker told you here on the show 2 years ago. Mentally, make sure that your thermostat for wealth isn't set too low. You become your expectations, and wealth is every bit as much, if not more, of having the option of doing what you want to do than it is about net worth or even cash flow. Passive cash flow lubricates your mobility from a job that you dislike to a job that you do like, or to no job at all, if that's what you really want. Would you want your kids to live below their means or expand their means? You are their influence. Do what you want to do. Have that option. And now your future is up to you and not your employer. You were born rich. Yeah, you were actually born rich because you were born with an abundance of choices. Then when you got to be about age 13 or 14, see, society stepped in and they began to stifle that, telling you what you're supposed to do. Well, what you're supposed to do, that aligns with an obligation, not an option. Align yourself with options and keep your options wide open. You become your expectations. Funny how that works every time. Well, like we do here from time to time, let's do an asset class whip around since Q3 recently ended. National home prices are up 6% year over year, according to the Case-Shiller National Home Price Index. By the way, if you're interested in following the Case-Shiller Index, be mindful that they're published with a 2-month lag and they're released on the last Tuesday of every month. The yield on the 10-year Treasury note recently hit a 7-year high. That's not so great news for real estate investors because fixed rate mortgages are tied to that rate. As far as shorter term rates, which move in lockstep with the Fed funds rate, the Fed announced its third quarter-point increase to the federal funds rate in September, and many feel that a December rate hike increase is on the table. There could be 3 or even 4 quarter-point rate increases in 2019. It was recently reported that the U.S. hit its lowest unemployment rate in 49 years. That's 1969. And that there have finally been some substantial wage increases. Well, that's exactly the type of news that makes the Fed want to keep hiking rates up higher in order to stay on top of inflation. Most stocks slid lower last week, partly on higher interest rate fears. Year to date, the S&P 500 is up about 6%. Oil prices are up about 25% year to date. Year over year now, gold is down 7% as denominated in US dollars. Let's answer your real estate investing questions with our first listener question. This comes from Todd from Medina. There's no state given there. I don't know where Medina is, but anyway, Todd asked, Keith, I've bought a few single-family residences now and made the 20% down payment on each one. On the last deal I did, I wanted to put as little down as possible, 15%, in order to maximize my cash-on-cash return. Let me just jump in here real quick. Yes, you typically can put as little as 15% down on an income property. Now, just getting back to Todd's question here, of course, this meant I need to pay PMI, private mortgage insurance, on top of the principal and interest. My question is, do you think that it's worth paying the PMI in order to put less down, assuming the property still cash flows decently enough? Is this a strategy that I should use for each property so I can control more property for less money? It seems to be a question that pits cash flow against cash-on-cash return. Okay, thanks for the question, Todd. For those that don't know, PMI, or private mortgage insurance, is an extra premium of a few dollars you need to pay every month because the risk premium for the bank goes up since you have less than 20% skin in the game. My short answer to this question, Todd, is maybe it's worth going with 15% down rather than 20, but probably not. And there are a lot of ways to answer this. One is with a question from me back to you. So, Todd, do you plan to soon invest in more real estate that you believe is going to appreciate? Okay, if your answer is yes, in conserving your capital by putting 15% down rather than 20% down, then if you're doing that because that means that you can both buy more property, so you're going to own more property at 7-to-1 leverage ratios rather than fewer properties at 5-to-1 leverage ratios. That's effectively what you're doing and what you're saying if you're putting 15% down rather than 20% down. If you're saying yes to that, of course, this strategy means lower cash flow and higher risk. It also has the potential for higher rewards to you if your properties keep appreciating. You can hope for appreciation. You know what? I say that it is even okay to expect appreciation, but don't count on appreciation to make your strategy work. Of course, 85% loan-to-value loans rather than 80% means that you've got a higher debt service, which is a headwind to cash flow, and then paying a PMI premium is another headwind to cash flow. It depends on you. If you've got sufficient cash flows from elsewhere to stay liquid, even if you've got extended vacancies in your properties, that helps your 15% strategy. Now, if you're borrowing from a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, out of, say, your primary residence to maximize your leverage like this, you'll want to be in a handful of different real estate markets to diversify. That might not even be enough. With your HELOC being sensitive to all these short-term Fed funds rate hikes, like I mentioned earlier, you are now subjecting yourself to the risk of borrowing short to go long. Your HELOC repayment period usually begins 5 to 10 years after origination. When I buy an income property, I like to think about it in terms of being able to hold it for 10 years or more, 10 years minimum if I would need to. So, Todd, in the early years, you need to be sure that the cash-on-cash return of your income property would beat the interest rate paid on your HELOC, but you don't mention a HELOC anywhere, Todd. So, in summary, the risk to you is excess vacancy and difficulty in servicing more debt and PMI. And then the reward is almost 7-to-1 leverage on more properties being better for you than 5-to-1 leverage on fewer properties if this climate continues to appreciate. Thanks for the question, Todd. Remember, compound interest looks really good on paper. It looks really good when it's plotted on a chart, but that often does not convert to reality. In fact, it nearly never does. After inflation and emotion and taxes and fees and volatility take their toll, in reality, mere compound interest on your own money is lame. It is impotent. It will not create wealth. Getting your money to work for you, that is the myth of the middle class. Think beyond getting your money to work for you because it isn't hard to do. Leverage creates wealth because now you're using other people's money, not only your own. Kiko from Corpus Christi, Texas asks, Keith, love your show. It has not only changed my mindset from a scarce one to an abundant one, it has changed my wife and I's lives and how we think about our return on time invested. We've bought 5 single-family turnkey properties, and despite not being on the same page with our property manager right away, it's now going really well, and we have $1,400 of passive monthly cash flow. But how are we going to achieve financial freedom from just 10 single-family turnkey homes? Thanks, Kiko. Well, first, Kiko, congratulations on getting started in the $1,400 of passive monthly income. Yes, I wanted to answer this because others have asked me a similar question about this maximum of 10 properties or doors that you can get with loans. Well, it's just simply not a maximum of 10 at all. So first of all, married couples can qualify for up to 20 conventional Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans, 10 for the husband, 10 for the wife. Those are the ones at the best rates and terms. But after you've exceeded that threshold, your loan terms are still not too bad on your next few dozen loans or more. In fact, you might remember that Shaylee Ridge was here with us just 9 weeks ago, and she told us about their specialty loan products, which you can look into after you've reached your Fannie Freddie threshold. 30-year fixed, 25% down, and rates at that time that were just about 0.7% higher than conventional, so not even 1% higher. It's not a commercial loan or cross-collateralization of debt. She told us that they generally come with a 3-year prepayment penalty. So we also learned on that episode that they have not found a limit as to the number of loans that they can do this way. Well, then maybe you used conventional on your first 20 husband and wife. Then say you go on to get 22 more with this specialty loan product I just described. And let's just say that now you've got 42 single-family rental homes, Kiko. Maybe you're thinking that's the way it would go. Now, even if you did do that, if you have 42 doors and say that it took the cash flow from those 42 doors to give you financial freedom, Well, in reality, every single one of them probably would not be a single-family home. If you have equity that accumulates from your earlier purchases, well, you might have two of your first single-family homes that have 40 or 50% equity in them that you can trade up into, say, a fourplex later because you want to keep a high velocity of money. So if you've got 42 doors, they might end up being spread then across 16 different properties in 3 different metro markets. As soon as you trade out of your first properties with 1031 exchanges, now you've vacated some spots from your first 10 and you can go fill them in again. I've lived an investor life of using this same exact technique myself. And there might be other reasons that you're not even using your first 10 or 20 Fannie Freddies or your specialty loan products. For example, maybe you own a 5+ unit apartment building or two. Even though they're residential property, those loans are in the commercial territory. Maybe you bought some low-cost single-family properties from a provider like Memphis's Mid-South Home Buyers, and you did not want to get a $52,000 loan for a $70,000 property, so you've foregone the leverage there and paid cash so you don't have a loan. Maybe you've bought cash-flowing agricultural parcels that provides passive income and there's no loan. So in summary, good question, Kiko. After your first 10 or 20 married, the loan terms, they're really not that much worse, and it's unlikely that absolutely everything is going to be a single-family home. More listener questions just like this next. You're listening to Get Rich Education.
Would you like to know the easiest way to create wealth and passive income with real estate? This is Marco Santarelli with Norada Real Estate Investments. Now you can access the best deals without the stress or hassle of having to find, renovate, or manage those properties. We save you time by providing you with passive income investment properties in some of the best U.S. markets. Learn more by downloading your free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Passive Real Estate Investing. There's no obligation and nothing to buy. Simply visit passiverealestateguide.com and get your free copy today. That's passiverealestateguide.com.
For a real estate investor like you seeking an income property loan, go to Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. Over the years, you've heard President Chaley Ridge generously devote her time to you here on the show as a guest. Ridge provides investment property loans in most U.S. states, and you're going to find out how they've helped more people realize their dreams of real estate financial freedom than any other mortgage lender in the entire nation when you get started at ridgelendinggroup.com.
This is Cashflow Diaries Jay Massey. Do the right thing, then do things right. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. I talked about how you become your expectations. Now we're continuing with listener questions here. The next question comes from Lacey in Pasco, Washington. Keith, you're the first person that's ever pointed out to us that the return from home equity is always zero and that home equity is also unsafe and illiquid. This has flipped our financial world upside down, and we now realize that we have equity-heavy rental properties in our portfolio, both in our home market and with the turnkey providers you've recommended. This makes us want to perform our first 1031 tax-deferred exchange, and we would love to know your tips, as we know you've done 1031s with a number of properties yourself. We're never quitting our daydream here in Washington State. Thanks, Lacey. Oh, I love that. Okay, Lacey, I wanted to bring up your question in this part of the show because it's somewhat of a natural follow-up to growing your portfolio, what we had in the last question. So simply by transferring the equity, usually from equity-heavy smaller properties, into smaller down payments on either more or larger properties. And when one does this, equity is not even lost. Your equity is merely transferred. Lacey, I published what is basically the complete audio guide to 1031 tax-deferred exchanges. It's not really called that, but check Get Rich Education episode number 143. That's where I went deep and I covered so many rules and nuances and traps to avoid and just the incredible financial benefits of the 1031 exchange. In that episode, I go well beyond just the 45-day identification period and the 180-day closing period. But to give you something new here, one mistake to avoid with the 1031 exchange is a mistake that I made and it nearly stung me. It's naming a new construction property as one of your replacement properties during your 45-day identification period, and then the construction is not complete by the end of your 180-day closing period. That's a risk. And hey, when you go ahead and identify your properties by the 45th day of your exchange, there are no redos or do-overs or substitutions once you've submitted your replacement properties. So what happened to me is that on the 45th day of this particular exchange, I had used the 3 properties rule. I named 3 replacement properties to close on in my exchange. Okay, that part is normal enough. But I'll tell you, Lacey, that 2 of those 3 were existing buildings, and the third one was a new construction property. The proceeds from the sale of my relinquished properties meant that I would have sufficient untaxed funds to close on 2 of those 3 named replacements, any 2. Well, when the new construction property went belly up and they weren't going to finish the construction on time, that meant that I absolutely had to close on the other 2 properties that I had named in order to use up all of my transferred equity, or else I would have had to pay tax on a substantial portion of that equity. And when that happens, that portion is called BOOT, by the way, B-O-O-T. Now, as soon as I knew I was in this possible predicament, I did not tell either of the owners of the 2 existing buildings I wanted to buy that my new construction identification went south, or else they'd know I was desperate and that I had to close on both of their properties. So the lesson, Lacey, is that if you're identifying new construction property as replacement property in your 1031 tax-deferred exchange, that's okay, but you're going to want to have a strong assurance that construction will be completed on time. But again, Lacey, episode 143 of this show is a pretty comprehensive audio guide to the 1031 exchange, and it's free, and it can be in your podcatcher in under a minute. The next question comes from William in Yorba Linda, California. William says, Keith, love your show. I am on the path of, like you say, not following money, but making money follow me as I grow my real estate portfolio. I'm fairly handy at fixing things and just wonder when the right time is for me to stop managing my own property. Currently, I own 6 single-family rental homes. It's manageable, but I wonder about my return on time invested. Any insight you have would be helpful. Thanks, William. Great question, William. A question all real estate investors should ask themselves, if they even ever do any self-management at all, is how long should I self-manage before handing my properties over to a professional property manager? Well, William, do you know what the answer was for me? It was the point at which I hit 8 rental units. Once I owned 8 units, which were, by the way, all in my hometown at the time, that's the point at which I handed my properties over to a property manager. I wasn't, I guess, that sophisticated at the time, and I didn't know how to invest in other markets then. But I'll tell you, handing the properties off to a property manager was one of the best things that I ever did. In fact, I should have done it sooner. It opened up the time for me to do so many more important things in life, not just vacationing to great places, but learning about the importance of investing in multiple markets for both better rates of return and more safety. Now, by today, I'm fortunate enough to own lots of rental property in several different markets, so I couldn't practically self-manage it all anymore. But if a tenant has a leaky faucet or the lawn needs mowing, they sure don't contact me. They wouldn't even know how to contact me. But see, I do want to make sure that it's being taken care of. I want to be a good operator. Real estate investors don't need to be handy at all, because I'm not, but their landlords or contractors do. When you start investing in real estate, it might be a good idea to manage your own property for just 1 to 2 years at the beginning, but that's it, no longer. It's not mandatory to ever self-manage, but if you do it for just a little while, it does kind of help you better understand what your manager is up against. And when you're double-checking your monthly property management statements for the rest of your life, You'll know what's a reasonable request to make of your manager and just what's an unreasonable request to make. I'll tell you what, sooner than later, those that have become wealthy fastest abandon self-property management, William. They realize that their best and highest use is understanding investing. It's not fixing broken stuff. It's learning about tax reduction. It's searching for the next good deal. And only make occasional course corrections to your property manager's approach. But it does help to read their statements and question them and scrutinize them a little bit. They're going to know that you're on your toes and that they need to be careful. Over the long term, your time is best spent managing your assets and investment, not managing your individual tenants and properties. This is about scalability. Scalability is the notion of being able to multiply your business into something that's profitable and duplicatable. Look, Subway doesn't make the best lunch that you've ever eaten, but they are the world's largest food chain because they have the best systems in place. Subway does not go ask one person to bake the sandwich bread, stock the fridge, clean the restrooms, come up with promotional ideas, be the store accountant, expand operations to Uruguay, and make all the customers sandwiches. Well, if they did, then how many customers could they possibly serve? It's the same way with you and your real estate portfolio. Now, if you own 60 rental units in 5 different markets, or even in one market, how would you handle all those inevitable repair service calls and monthly rent collections and just the scheduling of other service people, mowing and raking the lawn, looking at the squeaky drum on the clothing dryer, adjudicating whom is responsible for little carpet stains at tenant move-out, knowing the ins and outs of each state's landlord-tenant laws, and then handling all of the accounting? I mean, how could you possibly keep that up while simultaneously becoming the most effective investor that you could be? That would be ludicrous. Dealing with tenants can be annoying at best, and at worst, dealing with tenants can cause you to lose faith in humanity. In fact, I can't imagine how low my quality of life would be if I did all that stuff. So Subway or another successfully scaled restaurant knows that their best and highest use is, for example, marketing and demographic analysis, or launching a high-converting digital marketing campaign, or seeking tax incentives in a foreign country prior to expansion there. As a real estate investor, sooner than later, your best and highest use should not be continuing to practice your hardwood laminate flooring installation skill during tenant vacancies, and then making repeated round trips over to the property to show it to another prospective tenant. Once you leave that work to your manager, now you're leveraging more than dollars. You're leveraging your time and your team as well. You know how I like to say, do the right thing, then do things right. Look, property managers are paid to do things right. You only ensure that they do the right things. Your most valuable asset is your time. So don't just say it, don't just think it, act like it. And it takes time to build knowledge. Knowledge leads to power. Consider, too, how far do you really want to go down the road of trading your time for dollars again with self-management? Because that's what you do at your day job. Professional investors and the wealthy commonly calculate return on investment and return on equity. You want to achieve the best returns from your most important metric of all, the one that too few consider, your ROTI, your return on time invested. Or you can also think of ROI, if you like, as your return on involvement. That's another way to think of your ROI as applied to self-management versus professional management. Do you have a good return on involvement? And yes, I know that there are some hybrid management resources out there, Buildium, Cozy, but even then, ask if that's your best and highest use. Do you want another job, or do you want to be an investor? If you earn more than $25 an hour at your job, then why do $25 an hour tasks for your rentals? Before you purchase a property, run the numbers and make sure to account for the typical 10% of gross monthly rent that a property manager takes for their service. Before buying a property, when you run the numbers to see that the rent income exceeds all expenses, be sure to include that property management expense. And if you don't include that expense, then you would need to itemize your time into those calculations. 10% to a property management expense, that still leaves you with 90% of the gross monthly rent before expenses, and a property manager handles the headaches. Your property management fees are often tax deductible as well. Just try making your time tax deductible. The IRS does not like that. Additionally, consider that property managers usually manage hundreds of properties, so they've typically negotiated a discounted service rate from providers like plumbers, electricians, and HVAC companies. That's a lower rate than you could get if you use them yourself. This way, you're now leveraging the manager, whom is leveraging economies of scale, to often pass lower hourly rates onto you. That's like leverage within leverage. Property managers, they do a lot. They handle all the ongoing maintenance and repair of your property, all communication from tenants. They collect all the rent and send you your monthly owner draw, also known as your check, and build your monthly income and expense statement for you. So it's easy to see how profitable you were for the month, and this makes your tax preparation easier too. Property managers understand the local landlord and tenant law, the most effective way to execute it, and they already have all the forms and the systems with that local law. So hiring a property manager makes you scalable. How many properties could you possibly buy and give to a manager? Well, I don't know if it's infinite, but it's multiples more than you could buy and manage yourself. Investors have different strengths. Some might want to self-manage longer than others, but I don't recommend doing it for very long. But whether I talk to real estate flippers, wholesalers, note buyers, developers, it seems like they all desire to have the same end game in real estate, and that game is buy and hold. One thing is for sure, and I'm emphatic about this one, finding a good property manager is key. In fact, it's usually even more important than the property itself, so find a good one before you buy the property. If you don't find a competent property manager, the property will soon be managing you. Freedom of time is a prerequisite to wealth. So tenants don't call me and ask me to fix a cabinet door at move-in, or ask me to look at old carpet stains to adjust their security deposit at move-out, and they haven't for 10 years now. It's not my best and highest use, and it never will be. Find a good manager, and now what you've done is you have just promoted yourself to a better and higher use. Thanks for the question, William. It is totally relevant. That's it for listener questions today. I'd like to remind you that besides the other things I do in my life, which are produce this show, do videos for GetRichEducation.tv, I serve on the Forbes Real Estate Council, write articles for Forbes, and more. First and foremost, I am a real estate investor just like you. In fact, I just got 2 more income properties under contract to purchase last week. It's 2 single-family turnkeys in Florida. A lot of times, admittedly, I don't talk about where I buy properties because I want you to buy a property type that's in a market that makes sense to you rather than buying a market just because I bought there. But with interest rates rising and knowing that a Tampa Bay provider had some available property this month, I wanted to let you in on that. So what do I do exactly when I want to buy a new property anyway? What website do I go to? I go to greturnkey.com, download the latest investor report in a chosen market, and then I connect with the provider. I do the same thing that you would do. When the turnkey provider knows that you already downloaded your report and that you're coming in from Get Rich Education, they know that you're not coming in cold and you've already done a little something to educate yourself, and they know you'll be asking questions beyond the beginner ones typically, although it's okay to ask beginner questions. So all I did was I went to greturnkey.com, went to the Tampa section, downloaded the report, and connected with the provider. We had a little phone chat after I looked at some of their current listings in Tampa. These places are in the northern part of the Tampa MSA, and then I made my choices of the exact properties. I'm also using the same lender that we feature here on the show. I think it's really important that I am regularly myself doing what we discuss here on the show. I am a real estate investor before I'm any of those other things that I do each week. Next week, one of the most prominent real estate investors anywhere, Rich Dad Real Estate Advisor Ken McElroy, will be back on the show. He's also going to tell us specific moves that he's made in his real estate portfolio and why you can't make any money from the property that you don't own. If you're looking for your next cash flowing property, connect with a provider just like I do at greturnkey.com. I'm Keith Weinhold. You become your expectations, so don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
Ranked by Forbes as one of the fastest growing cities, Orlando, Florida has a big and diverse economy, yet still features affordable rental properties that cash flow. Our boots-on-the-ground turnkey provider, Greg Bond, wrote a special report to help you discover the amazing market of Orlando. Request your free copy today. Visit GetRichEducation.com/Orlando. That's GetRichEducation.com/Orlando.
71% of Americans aren't saving enough for retirement. It's going to get worse as people live longer, and you need to start thinking differently. But you can't lose your time. Real estate is the investment vehicle that's made more ordinary people wealthy than anything else. Keith Weinhold of Get Rich Education is host of one of America's top investing shows, Disrupting Wall Street. He's an international best-selling author, a writer for Rich Dad Advisors, and has been an active income property investor since 2002. He has created thousands in passive monthly income for countless followers, and now he has a free book, The 7 Principles for Creating Wealth in Your Life. Get your copy now at GetRichEducation.com/book. That's GetRichEducation.com/book. Because invest in what produces income for you now and later. Sign up now at GetRichEducation.com/book.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.